Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be creating this background made up of different sizes of triangles. When using 6x6 inch papers, even though they are a smaller size, you can still cover a larger area. With this layout, I'm using smaller triangles grouped together to create a large background. A really big advantage to using 6x6 inch papers on layouts with smaller pieces like these triangles is that with 6x6 inch papers, the pattern is also smaller. So you can get away with cutting these really small pieces while still being able to see the whole pattern. What I enjoy about this design and playing around with triangles is that you can use a variety of sizes and arrange them to fit together by having some pointing up and some pointing down and kind of interlocking them all together into one piece with these consistent internal margins throughout the whole design. To begin creating this layout, I started with some watercolor. I'm using beach photos for this layout, and I wanted to create a little splash of watercolor on the base paper to go with that theme. I try to get my watercolor as close as possible to the color of the water in my photos and my papers. To do this, I often have to mix different shades of blue. For this one, I used a dark blue and a teal to get the right color, and then I just flicked the brush over the paper to get a little spray across the layout. While my paper is drying, I'm going to work on my triangles. To create the triangles, I am starting with a square. As you can see, I've got a variety of sizes from 1 inch all the way to 6 inches. First, I use a ruler to find the center on one side of each square. Since they are square, it doesn't matter what side unless you have a pattern that only works in one direction, like words or waves or something like that, that you don't want upside down or sideways. After I have my pencil marks on each square, I use my paper trimmer and line up the pencil mark and the corners on the opposite side with the cutting blade track and swipe to cut. The smaller squares are a little harder to do this with because you can't hold it in place as well, or at least I can't with my trimmer. For those, I ended up using my ruler and a pencil to draw the line from the pencil dot to the opposite corners and then cut with scissors. Now these triangles are ready to add to the layout. I start by laying them all out to make sure I like the placement. I start with the biggest one first and then add the rest around it. I already had an idea and plan kind of mapped out with these, so arranging it went really fast. Most of the triangles are all going to fit together with small margins between them and no overlapping. But I do have two that will overlap, but I'm not worried about it because I like the positioning of the tan triangle and the overlapped part is going to be hidden behind the photos. When it comes to adhering them, I started to use my grid ruler to help make sure they are straight, but I quickly realized that I didn't even need it for that purpose because the grid pattern could help me keep everything straight. I keep the margins between each triangle about 1/8 of an inch, and I just eyeball them and try to get them as consistently spaced as possible. A few of the triangles I'm going to add stitching around them, like an outer frame around the outside of the triangle. So I'm not going to adhere those just yet. I want to draw my stitching lines first to make sure they are spaced the way I want. So now that most of the triangles are on the layout, I'm going to go in and add my stitching lines. I use my ruler and pencil to draw a line about 1/8 of an inch from the edges of a few triangles. For those that are going to have that outer frame, I use the triangle beside it to line up my ruler and draw the line. After all the lines are drawn, I add my photos. There is absolutely no use in stitching in areas that are going to be covered by photos, so I want to get those placed before I start. Now I can begin piercing the holes for stitching. I aim for stitches that are somewhere between 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. When all the holes are pierced, I use 3 strands of embroidery floss to stitch through the holes using a back stitch. If you are new to stitching and want to learn how, I have a video that shows my process. I'll link to it down below in the video description just in case you want to check it out. With the stitching complete, now I'm going to add some detail. First, I add some little punch stars throughout the design. Some of them I am placing on the triangles and some are on the edges of the triangles. I wanted to add more detail and dimension, so I thought these stars would be a good fit, and I used foam adhesive to help them pop off the page a little and stand out more. Next, I'm adding a little wooden anchor and some word stickers in the top left corner of the photos. And then I add my title sticker and another wooden anchor. And after that, I add my journaling strips. I ended up really liking the star details, so I went in and added some teeny tiny punched stars all around the edges of the triangles. Now, I liked the watercolor that I added in the beginning, but it didn't show up as much as I had hoped on that base paper. So I decided to go back in and try to add a little more detail to that to help it stand out just a little more. I remixed my watercolors and tried to get it a shade or two darker than the one I have previously used. Then I go in with a small brush and add a few dots of it here and there. I don't want to do the full flicking and spray it all over the rest of my layout, and it's pretty easy to go in and add a few dots of it here and there with just the brush. Then I use the dark blue as it is and go in and add just a few tiny dots of it. The last detail I add are some dots of my absolute favorite Nuvo Jewel Drops in Sea Breeze. This is an absolute must-have for water-themed layouts. When they dry, they are translucent and look like actual water drops. I love them and use them on almost every single water layout I make. And that's it, an easy triangle background design using 6x6 papers. I've learned that using these smaller papers can really cut down time, and this layout was proof of that. It took me a little over an hour from start to finish, which is really fast for me. If you are interested in playing around with 6x6 paper pads, but you don't know where to start, at Scrapbook Generation, we have lots of sketches that use 6x6 papers on full-size layouts like this. And we also have, I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe it is the largest selection of 6x6 paper pads in our online store. And I'll link to all of that down below. If you have any questions about this layout or anything else scrapbooking related, be sure to let me know in the comments. I am always happy to help. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.